We are live.
Hi, this is Julie Murphy with Arizona Farm Bureau. It's Friday. Blessings to all of you that join us live and then watch this video later. But it's Talk to a Farmer, Talk to a Rancher Friday. And I have the privilege today of interviewing Sheldon Jones, Deputy Director for the Arizona Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Julie.
Yes, and you have a long history and you're a ranch kid, so I'm going to get into all that.
Okay.
But the first thing I kind of want to ask you is, give me a little bit about your background and then your role as Deputy Director here for the Arizona Department of Agriculture.
Sure. Yeah, Julie, I was born and raised in Payson, as you mentioned, on a cow-calf ranch. My
Awesome.
family's been, I'm a fourth generation native. My family's been in Arizona.
Awesome. I didn't realize it was that long.
1880s, yeah.
Okay.
And so grew up in the cattle business. And in high school, my dad thought, and the banker in Payson thought, Valley Bank at the time needed ag bankers. And so my senior year, I worked half days at the bank, and later got on with the bank and spent 14 years with Valley Bank, mostly in the ag lending area.
Okay.
And the last 8 years at the headquarters here in downtown. Bank One bought Valley Bank, didn't want ag, told us to get out of it. So I went looking for a way to be active in agriculture in Arizona, and the Department of Ag was recently formed. The Animal Services Division needed an associate director, and so it was an easy transition for me to come from the ranch, from the bank to the department.
Awesome.
And then a couple years later, had the opportunity to serve for about 6 years as the director of the Department of Ag, 96 to 2002. So I ran the Agribusiness and Water Council for a couple years, went to Colorado for a few years with their Department of Ag, went to Illinois with a nonprofit farm foundation, ran their programs and financial offices. We launched the Soil Health Institute as one of the programs we managed. So I left Farm Foundation to stand up the Soil Health Institute in North Carolina. And after 7 years as the COO there and getting things pretty well on track, we returned home after 20 years on the road to return home to family and friends. And
so cool.
So yeah, I came home and Paul, the director, called and said, "Hey, want to make a few changes, want to do some things, really need some good help here. Would you come back?" And I said yes. And
That's
so
awesome.
I'm back for my second stint at the department. So it's good to be home in both fronts, home to Arizona and home to the department.
So you kind of do the same thing I did, sort of, kind of. I mean, I've been with Arizona Farm Bureau now for 18 years, but I feel like I came full circle because I was in magazine publishing and I went all over the country, and then they knocked on my door and said, "Hey, you need to come and hang out with us." So came full circle, the farm girl. The other thing I wanted to ask you, because I've never really had that chance, Sheldon, is just to ask you, like, having grown up on a cow-calf operation in Prescott. Payson. Correction. Thank you.
Yeah, someone might make note of that. So the whole rodeo thing, we don't need no conflict.
Yeah, that's true. And we want everything to be accurate when we're talking here. But Payson. So what is having grown up in that environment, what's your philosophy? What was your biggest takeaway from growing up on a ranch?
Well, I guess the biggest takeaway is just the hard work and what it takes to, what a full day's work looks like, and what the value of a dollar is. And through that experience, whether you're, working cattle and branding or whatever, building fence or negotiating with the Forest Service or negotiating with a cattle buyer, at the end of the day, you interface with farmers on buying hay and grain and that whole portfolio but just what it takes to put food on the table.
Right.
People don't have the foggiest idea of what it takes, from a genetics program, whether it's plants or animals, and the cultivation of that, and it just takes a lot. And the production side stops at the farm gate. And there's a whole system out there that gets that food, agricultural products, to become food and on the store shelves, and just an appreciation of that. So it drives conservatism, I guess, and how you think and how you invest your resources. But just work hard, do the right thing, and people will reward you for that. And I think that's still true.
We've always been told from people on the outside, they always identify our work ethic and our work commitment. Me as a farm girl, you as a ranch boy, and that just was instilled in us. The other thing that I think is really cool, and I'm not really asking you another question, but both you and Paul came from an ag background, and here you're now serving the Department of Ag constituents in terms of staff, but also the public, and then also our farmers and ranchers. That's kind of comforting for me to know. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think Howard Buffett had it right when it comes back to, most farmers and ranchers have about 40 seasons to make their or break their career, if you will, as an ag producer.
Right.
And I think that's right. And there's a lot of pressure as we've gone from an agrarian society 250 years ago, 90% of us were feeding ourselves,
right,
to 2% or less than 2%. And that whole middleman concept, there's a lot of pressure at the production level, and we've seen production grow and increase over multiple times out of need. One, to serve the public and feed the public, but two, with the thin margins to make a living at it. Right. And so, a lot goes into it. I'm just happy to be here to kind of bring that all full circle.
And I'm so delighted that they drew you back. Just pausing for, as I joke, kind of station identification, even though we're just doing this through the Instagram app. But for those that have joined us live, I'm here with Sheldon Jones, Deputy Director for the Arizona Department of Agriculture. I'm Julie Murphy with the Arizona Farm Bureau. And because it's Friday and it's the 10 o'clock hour, we're doing our Talk to a Farmer, Talk to a Rancher. And so I get to say I'm talking to the rancher that's kind of taking care of the Department of Ag. If you have any questions, certainly post, or any comments. Sometimes we're able to get to those questions. Most of the time we might not be able to, but if you have a comment or a question, Joel Carr, who's my partner in crime, as I like to say, will shout out the question or the comment. But thank you for joining us live. And again, to the audiences that will watch this later, just know that we're trying to help people understand what the Arizona Department of Agriculture does. So that's my next question, and I actually want to read this because it's a quote by your director, Paul Brierly, who also has an ag background. Started in California, and then they moved here to Arizona, and that was when he was young. So and he's still young.
We don't hold that against him.
We won't hold it against him. Your director, Paul Brierly, is often heard saying, "I want us to be the good kind of regulation." I grew up thinking all regulation was a bad thing, but I learned at Farm Bureau that regulation is the right kind of regulation is needed to make sure our food is safe and to certify farm products for sale elsewhere, even internationally. Expound on this a bit.
Okay, yeah, those are Paul's words, and I embrace those. I guess I summarize it a couple of ways. Julia's, your best marketing plan is a responsible regulatory program. Or you could liken it as, compliance equals commerce. That, we have, again, back to that 90 plus agrarian to less than 2%. There's a lot of pressure from meeting the consumer expectations. They want a safe, affordable, abundant food supply that's free of pests, disease, and pathogens. And there's only one way to assure that, and that's to have regulatory scheme is a bad word, but regulatory
oversight?
System oversight to assure that we're pest and disease free in plants and animals, and in the processing plants or in the leafy green fields, that we're free of pathogens. There's only one way to assure that, and that's to have standards and practices and handling practices and all that, sanitation requirements and biosecurity plans that minimize and try to address that risk profile. And so I think he's exactly right. Absent a good regulatory oversight, things can go awry. And we all know a small little incident can have dramatic impacts, or large incidences like we're facing now with high path avian influenza, not only in eggs, but increasingly in the dairy in California, Nevada, and surrounding states.
Are we hopeful on that area?
Well, we're hopeful. It's going to be a few years. I don't think it's real optimistic that in the next 6 months to a year we're going to get through this. It's just morphing, continues to morph as a virus, find new ways. Found a real nice home in dairy, mammary glands of dairy cows, and so it's going to continue to change, and we need to get on the side of not chasing it, but hitting it head on and addressing it.
Head on. So And you guys get the media calls, I get the media calls, and I remind people, when there's been a devastation of the bird flu, for generic terms, and a barn had to, you know, euthanize their chickens. Even if they sanitize the barn, do everything that they have to, it takes 12 to 18 months for those laying hens to be productive because they start out as little chicks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's tough.
It takes
and
time.
that whole regulatory framework that your organization abides by, you guys also have committees that are formed by our farmers and ranchers. I'm assuming you probably have committees that are consumer oriented. And so there's kind of also this relationship building that I've always been impressed with, and or staying in contact with those individuals that it impacts. That's the part that's important. The other thing I wanted to share with our listeners is your mission statement. The mission of our agency is to protect the health and safety of Arizona consumers, advance and support Arizona agriculture, and safeguard commerce. So now that you're back with us and you're home, how have you seen, because you've got some history even previous, how have you seen this mission evolve and improve over the years?
Yeah, Joe, that's a great question. And I think about that a lot because 25 years ago, when I was last with the department, things have changed. We have the weights and measures, Office of Weights and Measures now, right, which is both volume and weight, which is unique. A lot of states have one or the other, not both. So we're unique in that regard. I think that's a good thing. We brought in the pest management division for homes and residential and commercial buildings to get pesticides under one umbrella roof, if you will. And so I think that is good. We've also seen some increased challenges on foreign animal disease threats and risk. We just talked about one, but also on the plant pest side and on the microbial side, particularly in fresh fruit and vegetables or in processed meats. And so that profile of risk has increased. And I was shocked, if not to say disappointed, to learn when I returned that we've lost our ports of entry. I used to compete in sports as a young man, and home field advantage applies probably in high school sports and college sports, maybe professional sports, although I don't know. But in fighting pests and disease, like fighting wars, those are better done on somebody else's turf. Oh. And we surrendered that when we could say no at the port of entry and not allow something in. Now we're fighting those battles here. So
do I dare ask what caused that?
I guess it
politics?
Was budget cuts and that kind of thing, or somebody took somebody's. We lost the right to stop private vehicles 25 years ago.
Okay.
But we could stop commercial vehicles, all livestock, and commercial vehicles with poultry, plants, other living items. And so we lost that. And so we now, if we import a problem, we have to deal with the problem on our home turf, and that's not the best way to do that.
Do you think that ever changes?
Oh, you're closer to the politics here. I've only been back for a few months, but I don't know. I'm not sure what event it would take, Julie, to say, hey, wait a minute, we should go back.
Yeah.
It would take resources to stand up those facilities and people to do that.
Right.
And we didn't. Part of our problem is we didn't retain the full-time equivalent employee base. Disease or plant pest and disease.
Well, I'm going to cheer us on that we can take that back. So what do you think the agency does really well?
Well, I think you name it. I'm going to be our cheerleader. I think we do it all pretty well, but that doesn't mean we don't have some challenges. And when Director Brierley came in, he saw some opportunities to maybe be more efficient and drive some across division collaboration, and to functionally align similar programs within the same division. And so we're just in the process of rolling out a bit of a realignment within the department to put plants, the plant services division, together with the citrus fruit and veg food safety inspection division together under as a plants and produce division. And then on the environmental services, which has been, agricultural pesticides for the most part, and again, put those back together with the pest management division, with the structural pest, residences and commercial buildings, and also add to that under the environmental and consumer protection division, would also put weights and measures in there directly related to consumer protection. Gallons of milk, gallons of fuel, pounds of firewood or grain or hay, anything sold by volume or weight.
Right.
We oversee those scales, those pumps, those digital readers, and so it makes sense. Consumers are concerned about pesticides, whether that's in the field or in the foundation of your home, and so the pesticide side, and then the weights and measure side, it's all consumer protection. And so we think that makes a lot of sense. We're just in the process of rolling that out. And I think that's going to be a good thing. And we need to continue to hone our resources with support from the governor's office, the legislature, in shoring up our animal and plant pest disease efforts, because the risk is increasing. H5N1 is one example, what they're calling the new world screwworm in Mexico. They're allowing bison and livestock cattle to move across the border again. Like a host of things, flies don't respect geographic boundaries any better than other things. And so we need to be, extremely diligent and vigilant in protecting our domestic production. And so we have great relationships with USDA on both fronts, plant and animal side. But we're challenged a bit internally within the state to have the resources to not only maintain daily surveillance and detection, but in the response mode, things get ramped up pretty quickly. And if you have multiple events, it's quite taxing. And so we need to continue to work in that vein. Again, I think the Department of Ag and what it does in industries protection and promotion, and in the consumer protection, I liken this as a pretty good insurance policy, and pretty cheap, I think, if you look at the total cost. Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking you guys are the shield against all of that crazy stuff that, life, one of my sayings I use more than I probably should is sometimes life is thick. There's always something to challenge us. And obviously, with what you guys have to deal with and what you see, you're seeing these pest attacks, like for lack of a better word. And it's almost like you're the shield between us and the pests, so that we can live a happy, healthy, growing life, especially for our families.
And in that vein, with some of the other changes, we try to work to point the direction that way, 20 some years ago. But the livestock inspection and livestock officers for centuries plus now, I guess, we're focused on animal ownership, right? And making sure, cattle thefts were down and that kind of thing. But with the, increase in disease and pest pressures, we're transitioning that to be not just bee ownership, but that's important, but also to be eyes and ears for the state vet's office and be animal health technicians as well as livestock inspectors, to increase that footprint in the looking for lesions or blisters or, clinical signs of concern. And we saw the same thing in the citrus fruit and veg standardization program. It was standards. Is it a U.S. #1 potato or U.S. #2 tomato or melon, or they had standards of size and weight and that impacted what they could be marketed as.
Wow.
But same with dairy and eggs, and, meat grades, select, prime, choice, all that. We've seen those move to food safety programs. Our food safety inspection system is actually bigger than our produce standardization. It's that next step. Again, consumers don't want pathogens in their fresh produce. And so we've seen the same thing in produce with food safety and in the meat inspection. It used to be about sight, touch, smell kind of thing, and it being inspection, it's pathogens today.
Wow.
We're swabbing tables and walls and looking for pathogens. Yeah, we're looking at the quality of the meat, amount.
But you had to include that other component.
Yeah, we haven't lost that, but everything's moving more to a food safety or animal health from a livestock, live animal perspective, food safety in produce and pathogens in both in produce and food safety and on the meat side. So there's been a lot of transition, very positive transition.
Yeah.
At the state level and supported largely at the federal level, but I think a lot of that is unknown by much of the industry, but certainly the general public.
And that's why I'm here. We're going to probably be hanging out with you guys for the next, if not 6 to 8 weeks, just depending on. And I'm hoping that, so like when we go to the weights and measurements, do we get to go in their lab and see how they do their thing?
We can do that. Yeah, the
That'd
metrology lab is out in Glendale.
Okay.
Yeah, I was introduced to metrology labs in Colorado when I was the deputy commissioner there. We had the metrology lab for weight. We didn't have the volume side with the gas. But I was introduced to metrology. It's an interesting science.
That is so cool. And I know Joel will just get all excited about that because he's got a great sense of the technical aspects of all sorts of stuff. So
it's pretty amazing.
Yes.
I'm sure we can make that happen.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah, because, as long as I've had an association, just being an ag kid and then, now 18 years with the Arizona Farm Bureau, I sort of kind of know what you do. Most of it's on the ag side of it, but I don't really understand what you do. And I know that I represent the average Arizona consumer. So this is definitely not going to hurt us. So you kind of alluded to me, I see a lot of neat things happening with the streamlining and the reorganization of some of the departments. And I've kind of been given a little bit of insight to that. And we're going to try to follow that path now when I come out for some of the other interviews.
Thank you.
But, the inverse of this question, what you guys do really well and what you're doing to get better. But, where are the weak links or where is it that you really want to see? What's been your biggest pain point, I guess, as an organization?
Yeah, and I've been here, since October 15th, and so I'm trying to kind of figure that out. But there's a couple of things. We mentioned resources, particularly on the surveillance and detection, but equal to managing the response to minimize the effects of that. So that's something we need to do.
So you need more manpower then, right?
Yeah, and we have, working with the governor's office and legislature, we have a couple of things working over there, and we hope we continue to maintain their support. On the soft side or the non-regulatory side, Arizona Grown has been in the past a pretty good marketing promotion of Arizona products, both grown and made. And over time, that isn't the program today that it used to be, but the real strong desire from Director Brierly and Ashley Grab, this associate director for Ag and Food Systems Support Division, is to rekindle and build the Arizona Grown program.
Excellent.
With this, the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program and the other grant-funded producer support programs, whether it's flood and fire damage programs and that kind of thing. So rebuilding Arizona Grown is a big one. And then Paul talks about, his mantra is excellence through accountability and teamwork. Acronym is EAT. So I kind of embrace that as a cultural opportunity to continue to develop the agency culture around trust and honesty and open communications. But at the end of the day, we all eat, right? We espouse that everyone gets 3 squares a day. And so I think it's a nice acronym to kind of backstop the department that we are on the front lines of assuring that people can eat hopefully 3 squares a day.
Yeah. And
so we want to continue to build up our resources to deliver on that.
So there's definitely opportunity. And just like in any organization, there's definitely opportunity for improvement and meeting the challenges of the day, because the challenges of the day, especially in what you guys have to regulate, is kind of like a moving target.
Yes.
There's another pest that's coming up around the corner. Oh no, how are
or
we
there's
gonna...
a tool to address it
Yeah,
that
what's
if
the
is
tool?
licensed and registered, and
Yeah,
can we license it here, and are people
right.
utilizing it properly and maintaining their CEUs to be out there applying it? And yeah, there's a long, tangled string that weaves through all of this.
It is. And I might pause just because a lot of times people don't realize how much, even on the farm and ranch side, somebody has to go through to be pesticide certified. And don't they have to renew? How often do they have to renew?
Now you're going to start asking me questions and start me lying.
Is it
But I know there's continuing education
education?
units that apply
Yeah.
to that, and I think if you
Well, when I
maintain
get to
those,
talk to that division, they'll
yeah,
be able to
Jack
say.
can help you with that,
Okay, good.
and Vince on the structural
Okay.
pest management side. But yeah, we do provide industry hosts a lot of meetings around the year for
Right.
their industry members. They ask us to um, endorse their CU continuing education credits for that. So we review and provide that service so people can maintain their certifications and licenses. And whether there's a 5 or 6 year, you got to come retake the test. Yeah,
I think it's
Jack and Vince can
continuing.
help you with that. But
Well, I know there was a period, I thought my dad told me that he had to come and get recertified every year or every other year or something like that. And as a farmer, because he wanted to be able to have it so that he could do his own application. So this is the thing that I like to tell people. I said, do you know that if they're commercial business that applies pesticide, they have to go through certifications? And anybody in ag land has to be certified if they want to apply. My dad could also hire somebody, and oftentimes he did, but he just felt like it was important. But I, as a consumer, though you would encourage me to probably go through the classes too, there's nobody going to vet me. So if I go buy some chemical pesticides too, because I've got an attack of some kind of infestation, and I can just throw it on there, and it's like when you're a kid and you think, a little bit more
sugar on your cereal.
Yeah. A little bit more sugar on your cereal, or a little bit more laundry in the wash machine is going to make your clothes cleaner. Mm-hmm. Not the case. So I like to make that distinction a lot of times.
And that's a good distinction. Yeah. I mean, what we do to ourselves on our own property is one thing. What you do as a service to someone else on their property as a practitioner, it's hard to regulate common sense. Yeah. And that's why hopefully homeowners are reading labels and applying things. Right. But yeah, we don't want to overdo it, but we want to make sure those who are doing it for a service, people are getting their money's worth. Right. And the other thing on where we can do better, Julie, to your point about people's access to the department, is our IT infrastructure is not where it should be. Okay. And we've worked with the legislature and had some money to kind of front end load some of that, but many of our registration or community citizen interface needs improvement. Oh. And then our data management, whether it's reporting to the feds or reporting to the legislature or the governor's office, that data collection, making information out of the data and getting those reports out, that is probably one of our biggest challenges right now, is to keep up with technology. And to make it the user interface well, because you've got a lot of customers, basically. Yes, yeah. And so we need, it's a focal point, and we're working on that every day to find ways to improve it. Yeah. So when you talk to Arizona consumers, what's the main elevator pitch you like to give them now that you're back with us? Or another way to put it, if you have 5 minutes up at the podium, I'm giving you somewhat of a podium. Yeah. Well, and not so much the Aggies. You'll get to say that later. But to just the average Arizona family. Yeah, well, if you have a 5-minute elevator speech, it's either an awfully tall building or an awfully slow elevator. So you try to think about like 6 or 20-second increments. But, that's true. But I think that Arizona Departments of Ag, and I've been part of 2 states Departments of Ag, and I've worked with, probably nearly all 50 states at some time or other for the last 40-some years. And I think state Departments of Ag in Arizona is no exception. To that, is they're unknown as to what their reach and touch is to the consumer on a daily basis. Wow. And so my message is, if you consume it, drink it, eat it, It doesn't matter if it's tofu or vegetarian or vegan or, Atkins or whatever. Um, there's a 95% chance that the Department of Ag touched that, if not the product, the process that presented it, or the scales that was weighed on, or the scanner that scanned it. We touched something of your life every day, multiple times a day, and you probably don't know that.
Wow.
And so I come back to that. We're kind of the gym in the food production, food system equation, and that for the price of what we do it for, we're a pretty good insurance policy
That's
for a
awesome.
safe food supply in Arizona. And this time of year out of Yuma, we touch not only the country but international customers. And with pistachios and other products, melons, we ship a lot of stuff outside of this.
And you have a touch point with that too.
Yes, ma'am, we do. Yeah.
That's awesome. So whether I'm a carnivore diet fan or a Mediterranean diet fan or I'm a vegan, you have a touch point on that.
Yes, especially, okay. Fresh fruit and vegetables and the leafy greens particularly, very susceptible to microorganism contamination.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it may not necessarily be heightened for those dietary choices, but it's certainly present.
That's awesome. And to my rancher family and friends in Sheldon, I am not a vegan.
Yeah, me
or
either.
A vegetarian.
Yeah, me either. And they say I wear it well, so we'll see how that works out.
Exactly. Well, then the same 5 minutes at the podium speech to our farmers and ranchers. What do you say to them?
Yeah, and I say that we want to be your partner, and that sometimes gets me in trouble. That you have the fox watching the hen house. Well, that's not the case. We may have, Director and I, many of our employees came through production ag or part of the food system or studied it in college, but we have employees here that have been here for 35 years. We had 2 that left at the end of the year that were 35 plus. They were here when I was here the first time. There's people that were here when I got here the first time and that are still here. And so we're doing something right. And so I would like to think of us as partners with the industry, and that, again, that compliance with regulatory requirements to maintain consumer confidence and environmental protection equals commerce. And so we're not here to impede that. We're here to bolster that. So we wear 2 hats. This side says, I'm here to look at you. This side here, I'm your biggest cheerleader. And so we have that balance. And I would like to think the industry, as frustrating as it might get, there's good actors, there's bad actors, there's biological things that we don't control. Not our fault, not their fault. It just happened. Let's get through this. The common goals, and let's find a way to get through this and have that compliance with what we need to do equal to or result in that access to commerce. And that's what I hope we're positioned in the department to do.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you how many, it sounds like there's a bunch of you that had some kind of ag background like you, which again, I think is to the benefit of the organization, and or they went through, got an ag degree from our land-grant university, U of A. So there's some domain knowledge in here that's extremely valuable. And I'm sure it was hard for you guys to see some of your 35 plus year employees go, because that you always get nervous that that domain knowledge kind of goes out the door with them.
And one of my mantras throughout my career has been, trying to cultivate employees and advance employees and give them career paths to develop and advance. Is if you're not replaceable, you're not promotable. So don't be afraid to train your replacement.
Right.
Because if you're the only guy in the shop that can change spark plugs on a 62 Volkswagen, you're probably not going to graduate to be the mechanic on the BMW. Right. But if someone can come in and do those spark plugs on the VW, then there's opportunity for you to go forward. And so we want to promote that and have a culture of cross training and redundancy for career path development and advancement, but also redundancy so people can go on vacation. They're going to come back to inbox emails that we can't control. but the flow of paperwork and that can continue to move where they come back, can address their emails and pick up where they left off, not have to address, a 2-week stack where industry's held up or consumers are held up or licenses are held up. We want to see that cross hybridization, and that's part of the restructure, is to leverage what we have had between environmental services and plant services, but bolster that with weights and measures and environmental and plants and the fruit and veg folks, because we have people all across the state. And if there's a weight and measures guy in Safford and we need a sample of something there for plants or need to run a sample for the vet's office, we don't have to run a veterinarian down there and back. They could pull that for us and bring it into town. So we just need to continue to develop those kind of relationships within the department to give a customer service opportunities a better chance.
I like the philosophy, and I think it's workable. How many employees?
Around 325.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is amazing to me. Because Julie, when I was here, left in 2002, we were about 325.
Wow.
Yeah, and we've brought in weights and measures, and we've brought in the pest management division, but we've lost the ports and that. But it's about this almost the same. The budget's higher, a little higher, but the number of people doing an expanded reach of activities is pretty impressive what we get done.
Deputy Director Sheldon Jones, thank you so much. This was so interesting. And to those audiences that joined us today and or will see it when we save it to Instagram, please hang with us. The rest of these conversations are going to be as fascinating as Sheldon's was.
Probably more.
And we're going to learn, we're going to continue to learn. So I'm excited to learn more about the Department of Agriculture here in the state of Arizona.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well done. Thank you. Thank you all.